here's another quick recorded stream. What I'm going to do different in this one is actually go through some of the current Elliott wave structure. So I'm going to start off on the weekly time frame, and I'm just going to explain a little bit on each of them as to what I'm actually seeing. So when you see a 5 move down, obviously bearish market, it doesn't quite work like this. This is just my kind of interpretation on simplifying Elliott as a whole. So what I'm actually seeing is a nice range bound move, which is giving us, an A, B, C move as a whole. So you've got the A, the B, and ultimately a C. It's just a question of how I've simplified and what I'm actually seeing. So we call this one low for this move back up, and bear in mind we are on the weekly time frame. So I can see a nice push up before the continuation down, and that's where we are currently on DXY. If you're not sure what the DXY is, then Paul Varco's done a really nice explanation on how to utilize the DXY and obviously what it kind of relates to in terms of using it almost as an indicator. So DXY for me will determine a few other pairs, but this is what I'm currently seeing. So the longs and shorts of this is I'm currently seeing some range bound action with a view of taking this short. So that's where I am at the moment in the DXY chart. Over to GBPJPY. What I'm actually seeing on this one is quite an aggressive move back to 4. I'm not sure whether or not 4 has just come in on this candle. I think I'm actually going to be looking for some confirmation on this particular close. At the moment, we've had quite a lot of effort up, but we've also got quite a lot of reward on this. Obviously, we closed tonight. So assuming that we close in a pretty similar fashion to where we are at the moment, I'd like to say that this is going to give us the first move towards the 0, 1, obviously back down for 2, up for 3, 4, and a completion of 5. I'm not too concerned about the levels at the moment. This is still weekly time frame, so I'm not overly obsessed in terms of the numbers. I'm looking more for the bias at this particular point. So that is a quick one on GBPJPY. I'm just going to go through them in order as to how I see them, what I'm looking at. I'm actually looking at the Australian dollar myself as a personal trade at the moment. This is something that I've watched for a while, so there's a little bit more information on this one for that reason. And the general idea is that we've had a nice 1-2 move up to 3, which fits nicely into a Fibonacci extension level. It's now just a question of confirming the 4 and then 4 up to 5. So pretty similar. I don't think we're quite there yet. My target is going to be around the 83 level for the 5. And therefore, I'm waiting for a little bit of extra confirmation. I'm hoping that this will give me one nice bullish push, a pull back into the bearish that might only go to the 50% level of the channel. And then from there, a move on up to 5. That also fits in my favor with the DXY move, because as we get increased DXY volatility / weakness, we're actually going to see strength coming in the form of the Australian dollar USD. So the logic is pretty much mirrored to DXY. One goes up, one goes down. And that's what I'm looking at in this particular pair. Over to Euro Japanese yen. I think where we are at the moment, this one for me, we've just hit a 5 completion. So this again fits into the Elliott wave logic. I haven't gone so far as to look at this on a monthly time frame yet, but I think the general assumption is that we might get some kind of move down, push up, move down, giving us obviously an ABC move. So even on a higher time frame. Now, at this particular point, I'm not really interested in trading this pair at the moment, but I can see that the Fibonacci fits a 5 extension. We fit inside the waves here from obviously further back. And therefore, I kind of like this, but I don't like trading this at the moment. I think it's going to take me another couple of months, if I'm honest, in terms of finding the right move on this one for the types of trades that I do. I'm definitely a longer term trader. So yeah, at the moment, this one's kind of off the table for me. It's not really as interesting as GBPJPY or where we are with Australian dollar, US dollar. So straight into the next one. And guys, just for you to know, I'm a big believer in kind of jumping through these things quite fast rather than spending 4 hours talking about something that doesn't really need to be talked about. I'd rather kind of get to the point and show what I'm actually looking at and why. So GBP USD cable, I'm actually seeing on this one an aggressive move outside of the Kennedy channel. And this is something else that I've looked at for a while. So potential for a trade. I'm now looking for some confirmation of this particular level. Let me see if I've got anything on the indicators. So where we are right now, I think we're going to get another little test of the low in terms of the weekly, which could be obviously a double bottom for the 4 before moving on up for the 5. I'd like to see the oscillator come back to the center line, and that could give us this around a similar time to the stochastic, and therefore I still think we are 3 to 4 bigger picture, and I'm looking then to take a long from 4 up, like I said, still on the weekly, and that's the logic. GBPJPY, so sorry, GBPUSD on this one. EURUSD, I think we were in a similar position. I think we're going to get a reach. Actually, we're a little bit further ahead in terms of EURUSD. I think we've actually had the move up. We're coming back down, which in theory could be easily the 0 move here, up to a 1 and back down for a 2 on the smaller time frame within the bigger time frame. Again, no levels at the 5, so ignore the numbers. I'd like to see then obviously a 3 impulsive move up, a 4, and a continue on up for 5. So again, pretty much confirmed by DXY weakness will give the euro strength. And therefore, I think this makes a lot of sense at the moment. Another test of the bottom. Let's see where we are on the stochastic. So again, we are actually a little bit further ahead on EURUSD compared to GBPUSD. I think we're actually seeing a nice move back up in terms of the oscillator. And I think where we are right now, there's only another little bit of weakness to come before I think we're going to get a bit of a turnaround. So let me just see what this is like on the daily. Let's just let this load up. So yeah, on the daily, I think we're actually now starting to see a little bit of strength come in. So we've got no false bar in and around this region. Let me just draw that again. So we got no false bar there, which means, you know, we are likely to see a little bit of strength now on this one. So what I'd like to do is to see another little push up on the daily, that giving us a little bit more strength before another drop down, giving us a weekly oversold level, which will then push up, giving us the spring, in essence, to springboard off up from 2 up to 3 on the bigger time frame. Okay, so let me get rid of these. Next one, USDJPY. So I suppose pretty similar to the Euro Japanese yen. I think I'm actually seeing at the moment a day 5. If we just go back to the DXY weakness coming will actually push JPY obviously down. So I'm expecting more JPY strength. Obviously USD weakness, which kind of fits into this quite nice. So at the moment, it's kind of as simple as that. That's what I'm looking at the moment. I think we've actually now got a 5th wave up on the daily, which is part of a much bigger move in the weekly and monthly looking at it. And therefore, I'd like to see some weakness in terms of USD Japanese yen. Where are we at on this one? USD CAD. I think in terms of the USD CAD, again, I mean, it's pretty much the same story all the way through. DXY weakness will give obviously USDCAD strength, and therefore I think the pullback that we currently see in for the 3 to 4 move on here is going to be very similar to what we saw in DXY itself, where we're sitting in a kind of a range bound move currently, and that really is the logic, almost kind of in the inverse of this. So I think what we're actually seeing is now, again, a little bit behind the actual DXY itself. So I think we're going to get a move up, a move down to give another move back up. I think we're only going to get another test of the high before continuing on down. But the longs and shorts of this, I think we're going to be in some kind of sideways range until we breach the range and then come down 4-5, which makes perfect sense when we're looking at weakness in DXY overall. New Zealand dollar, US dollar. Okay, so this one, I suppose, very similar to the Australian dollar. They obviously move with a high correlation. I kind of get the impression that we haven't quite seen the end of a 4 yet, although I don't think we're going to push down much deeper. I think we might get another test of the bottom before a move on up for a 5 wave. Let me just double check on this. So yeah, so we pretty much still moving down. So I think, like I said, one more little try at the bottom, but I think the fact that we are now entering the oversold area gives me some confidence that the 4 is there or near enough. I'm now looking for obviously the first move to the bullish side, and then that'll give us the 0, the 1. I'm looking for a pullback 2 before taking this one long as well. So I think for me, my favorite trades right now are lining up to be Australian dollar, US dollar, New Zealand dollar, US dollar. And I think, if we wanted to take a short, we can go probably short USDCAD, probably USD Japanese yen, and then obviously long GBPUSD. So these are obviously longer term, visions on this. And I think, again, similar to the Canadian pair, I think we're actually seeing, a nice downward push. We're actually seeing now a nice range as a whole. Although we've come out of the range, I think the general idea is this channel, this level, is what I would regard as a large auction area. And therefore, I think another couple of tests, another move in, potentially down before this, is what I'd like to see there, unless we get obviously a massive break of this kind of level here. And then I think once we've breached that, we might get a move that looks a little bit more like this instead. But I think the general idea is now just waiting for the breach of the key level before looking for short on that. So it's okay. I think the only problem I have with this one over some of the others, if this is a 4, I'm not sure if we're going to get back up as high as that, which means in theory what we're actually looking for is the inverse, and we're looking for a 0 or 1, a move back to 2, and then ultimately a 3. And like I said, whether it's in the channel, below the channel, I think that's pretty much the story all the way through on USD Swiss franc. I've then covered gold, just a quick one on gold. So I think in terms of where we are with gold right now, I think my last call for gold, which was, let's check the date, my last call for gold, there was one on the benefit. I think it was just before, this, the gold respect. So I'll put this in just to show. This is a little bit of logic as to why I was calling gold, where I was actually calling it. So in terms of gold, I was expecting back on May the 25th, a little move up to give us a false move up before dropping down. And then what I'd like to do is to see the center of the regression channel before I start looking at some key areas to reassess. So the call obviously was to move up a little bit, giving us a false out, and back down to the center of the regression channel. So if we look at what gold has done in terms of the play out, we've actually gone up and given us a bit of a fake out, and then straight back down to the center of the regression channel, exactly as planned on this particular point. So I'm happy with gold at the moment. I think where we are and what we're currently seeing is a daily 4 move, and that obviously should give us now push back for a 5 bigger picture. So I'm not really kind of into this one just yet. I think the idea was just now to assess where we are. I'd have to go into smaller time frames to work out if we are ready to go bullish again. But so far, it's been very respectful. It's gone exactly where I thought it was going to go. It's done everything we've kind of planned out and mapped out, as you can see from the trading view post. And therefore, reassessment kind of go again, really. I've covered, I think, the USD. So this is obviously Nasdaq. So I think in terms of where we are with this one, I think we've just seen a daily 5, which equals a weekly 3. And obviously, as I keep saying, guys, I've tried to simplify everything. I'm not really into the zigzags and the flats and what pattern we're in internally. All I'm looking at is higher time frame, 3, 4, 5, and therefore I'm looking now for a pullback A, B, C move on the weekly / daily, giving me a weekly 4 down on this level. I'm not even checking the levels at the moment. Obviously, I'll go in smaller time frames for that. And then obviously another push back up for 5, which will give us a weekly 5. I'll use some Fibonacci extensions on that, and then kind of good to go. Let's cover Bitcoin. Bitcoin for me, pretty similar. I've actually called the top of Bitcoin back in March the 18th. There was obviously a nice little move in there. I think it was around $2,000 off. I was looking at some liquidity pools in a market that hadn't even tested that high yet. So my assumption was 62.5, and I think we actually got to 64.5 before obviously the drop and the breakdown. So it's done exactly as we'd expected. I think actually this one's worth me going into TradingView and looking at again the reasons and the logic on this one. So if I come back to the main move, let me put this in. It's just loading up. Let TradingView load itself up a second. Okay, let me come back to this. We're not getting it loaded up. Okay, I'll cover that again. So the general idea was I wanted to see a push up from here. So we had what I assumed was the top at the time on this one. I seen, an A move, a B move back, which I think this was the top I was aiming for. This created a UTAD in terms of Wyckoff. Then obviously a move down. This was a little bit more aggressive as well than I initially planned. I think the key levels were around this level. So what was that? 56, and I think we saw a 59. So you could see the offset of the 2,000 there become a factor in the breakdown. But I think the longs and shorts of it was the target area was still around the 30k level. And this obviously was played out, all the way back from where we were back obviously in March, I think March the 18th. So what I'll do is, now that this is actually finished loading, I'll come on down to the posts and put the post in terms of where it was. I think it was page 4 or 5 now. I've obviously talked about this recently in the Discord chat and covered this several times on some of the streams. So again, leave this load. So in essence, what I'm seeing with this right now is still bearish sentiment as a whole. I don't think this looks very impulsive as a move. It'd be nice to see where we are Sunday afternoon, and then from there I think we get a bit of an idea as to where and why and what next. But for me right now, still pretty much bearish until something convinces me otherwise. What page were we on this one? Page 3, page 5. So just confirm when I'm waiting for this one to load. Page 5, down a little bit further. So this one here. So obviously this is all on TradingView. So if you want to go back through the profile, you'll see some of these calls, and this one in particular is where it all started, I guess, in terms of the Bitcoin top and then obviously the push on down. You know, because I'm looking at the higher time frames, I think this was just quite an obvious move moving into the kind of distribution phase of Wyckoff. It's obviously loading up, loading up, loading up. Let me go back. I'm still getting the loading. Here we go. One more time. So I think the general idea was calling the A move and then up to B. Like I said, we overshot B by about $2,000, which meant C was always going to be a little bit higher than initially planned rather than down low. D then was going to give us obviously a bit more of a pushback up given the $2,000 difference. And I think for me, the extension to E made a lot of sense given the liquidity pools over on the left-hand side. So when we played this out, we actually saw a nice little move down to A little bit more aggressive on B. C ultimately was over here, which meant D was this one. So obviously a little bit higher than anticipated. And then from the pushback all the way down, this was always going to be the target area of interest. Like I said, I'm less concerned about the move in the middle. What I'm actually looking for was 3 to 4. And that was my take on why this was a nice little target zone for the drop. It's obviously played out quite nice. And that's some of the logic as to why, you know, we were calling what we were calling in Bitcoin back in March. So that's Bitcoin. What else were we going to cover? I think we were asked to cover Square. So I'm just going to look at Square real quick. And then on the Square chart, let me get rid of this and get rid of this. Come on, zoom in. So on Square, what I was actually seeing is we've just taken a 1-2 move down on the weekly. We're now inside a 2 to 3, which means if you come in on the daily, we'll actually see a nice 0, 1, obviously back down for 2, up for 3. And the idea is the 3 should likely come in around the 263.66 level. So 264, I've rounded that to, before we start seeing a pullback for. And then the 5 completion on this, I'm liking at the moment a rather small move overall, giving us a completion 5 at 296. So let's run that down to 297. So round it up a little bit, 297. And therefore, that's the assumption on Square as we stand. So I'm going to leave it like that for now. That's obviously quite a few pairs that we've covered today on this. Like I said, only the Elliott logic, but hopefully this makes a bit of sense and you guys enjoyed the stream.